So moving on to part 3 then, what happened when we got back from our trip? Well, first of all, we had to ingest our data, and we ended up with almost 100 gig of raw audio, 43 hours of recordings. And I've put it on here, the sheer amount of stuff. We didn't really realize along the way how much we were recording until we got back and tried to look at it all and work out how to listen to it. It turned into about 2.5 hours of mastered recordings by the end. And we didn't lose any data. We were terrified, along with the camouflage problem and the rain problem, that we would lose data. But I had a laptop on my back the whole time. I was swapping out SD cards, and we did some backing up online as well when we got back to the hotel at the end of the day. So we didn't lose anything because everything was backed up.
First thing we always did when recording something is to make sure we slate each recording at the start and at the end. We always mention the equipment we're using, time of day, location, what's going on, what we are hearing when we leave, and when we pick up the equipment, that sort of stuff. This is very important because, we will most likely not remember that recording when we sit down in the studio a week or a month later. So after packing everything up, we could start with the editing. Those raw files were copied into a new folder that became the editing one. Even though I would have loved to listen to everything we recorded, I just didn't have the time to go through each file and listen to all 43 hours. What became a massive time saver for us was RX, Isotope RX. Just by looking at the spectrogram, I could tell what was interesting to us and what could be discarded. Things like individual bird calls, distant plane or a train, or even hikers walking by were quite easy to spot through the spectrogram. I dropped markers to name those events, so I didn't use at this point any destructive editing. Shall we go to the next slide? Thanks. So those editing files were duplicated once again, and now we had the soon to become master files. At this point, destructive editing is allowed, such as spectral editing. I have to say, in some cases, spectral editing can make us rescue recordings that otherwise we couldn't use when there's no way to avoid capturing distant human-made sounds. My approach is to basically copy the good parts of a recording and paste them into the dirty ones. As long as it doesn't cover a lot of the spectrum and there's no relevant content going on, this could work. But this also needs to be used carefully, or everything will end up sounding unnatural and very odd. In terms of EQ, in some recordings, I had to get rid of most of the low content since we could hear some traffic rumble in the distance. Some other recordings only needed a high pass filter around 30-40 Hertz. No compression, limiting, or noise reduction was applied to the master files. We would take that into account once the assets were mastered. Basically depends. We're not doing this because it depends on the needs of the project. Same applies to the mix. What can work for one project doesn't mean it will work for the next one. So at this stage, basically the less processing the assets have, the better. Since we had very, very long recordings, we had to turn those into small pieces of around 3 to 5 minutes. This might sound obvious, but the goal here was not to break the natural flow of a soundscape, for example, by not cutting bird sounds halfway through. The last thing we did was to implement the metadata. We use UCS for that matter, Universal Category System. UCS, for those who don't know, this is a public domain that provides a category list of SFX. The idea is to offer a solid categorization of those sound effects, so it's not the Wild West anymore when you are searching for a sound in your favorite audio asset manager, whether that's Soundly, SoundMiner, or any other one. Now we're gonna play montage that includes those master audio files along with some footage we took in that trip, or actually Alex took in that trip.
And this really shows off some of the landscapes as well.
Yeah. It's a bit laggy, but you get the idea.
Yeah. And this is what happens when it then goes finally into the game. So this isn't necessarily just the ambience recordings from New Forest, but this is a mixture of different parts of the ambience with some New Forest in there as well.